I was a hustler as a kid. I was a politician, and you know, I've never changed. I've always been very frenetic and a go-getter.
I think I'm pretty much the same person you see on the screen, because I never had any lessons to anything else.
Hi, I'm John Tesh, and it's a day for nostalgia on One-on-One. If you can still remember Bob and Justine and Arlene and Kenny, you probably watched too many afternoons of American Bandstand in the 50s and the 60s. They were regular dancers on that show, and it originated from Philadelphia. And the performers were people like Frankie Avalon, Fabian, Bobby Rydell, Buddy Holly, Bill Haley, and the Everly Brothers. It was where we learned those classic dances I could never learn, the Watusi and the Bristol Stomp. And its host was a smooth-talking, handsome young man named Dick Clark. Well, some things never change. And if you can still remember all the words to Happy Trails to You, you'll also remember a dog named Bullet, a horse named Trigger, a sidekick named Pat Brady, and a Jeep named Nellie Bell. We're going to visit the greatest cowboy of them all, Dale Evans' husband, Roy Rogers. Stay with us.
When someone needs a helping hand, don't let them...
The format was simple. The MC played records, the kids danced, and America watched. The year was 1956. The show was American Bandstand, and the host was a new kid by the name of Dick Clark.
Once again, with a song called Lonely Boy, here is Paul Anka.
Dick Clark started a lot of careers on that show, introducing such newcomers as Fabian, the Everly Brothers, and Jerry Lee Lewis. And he popularized the favorite teen dances of the day, including the stroll, the bop, the jerk, and in 1960, the twist, led by none other than Chubby Checker. In 1986, Dick Clark celebrated 30 years hosting American Bandstand, and when the show was canceled in 1989, Dick Clark had never missed a performance. Dick Clark has become synonymous with the word host. For 15 years, he held the podium position on the Pyramid shows. And alongside Ed McMahon, he's got more than a few laughs on a series of shows based on super bloopers and practical jokes. Be it a host or producer, Dick Clark's credits are endless. He is the man behind such events as the Golden Globe Awards, Farm Aid, and the American Music Awards. Television movies like Elvis, Murder in Texas, and the movie which won 5 Emmys, The Woman Who Willed a Miracle, starring Cloris Leachman. Sharing every moment with Dick is his wife of 14 years, Carrie. They met in 1969, and since that time, he claims they have been together 24 hours a day. Carrie works with Dick here in his Los Angeles office. It is a showcase for Dick's memories and for his memorabilia. Dick Clark may be a perennial teenager, but he's a teenager with a career that spans 40 years. When you were a kid, I got to believe that you listened to the radio a lot.
Yeah, I did. My favorite story is I had a diary. I found it the other day. It was 1939, which may be 9 years old, roughly. And every other page was I dug a hole, I built a tree house, I listened to the radio. Stayed home from school today, I listened to the radio. It's on every other page. There was something way, way back then.
When you were a kid in high school, I was reading where you were voted most likely to sell the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, I was a hustler as a kid. I was a politician, and you know, I've never changed. I've always been very frenetic and a go-getter.
When you were a kid, what were your parents like? Were they as active, in need of action as you?
My mother was a housewife in those days. Moms didn't have a job other than to raise the kids. My father was in the cosmetics business in New York and eventually went into the radio business because he knew that was my desire. My brother, I lost in the Second War, and he only was 20 years old, and he was an entirely different personality than I. He wasn't driven. He was a great athlete. He was taller than I. He was my idol and still is. I miss him terribly, and it's been, you know, 40 years.
When you did American Bandstand and all the other shows that you've done, were you able to relate to the teenagers
I've always been real comfortable with young people, more so than people my own age. I'm very comfortable with very old people, but kids are the easiest.
Were you sad when Bandstand went away?
Yeah, very. I still fantasize we're going to bring it back. Everything in my professional life I owe to that show. It is my fourth child. I'm very, very sentimental about it.
1960, the payola scandal.
Oh, yes.
You were accused of playing records, receiving money to play records.
Yeah, I escaped barely by the skin of my teeth because I did not receive money for playing records. I gave money away for playing records. As immoral as that may seem, it wasn't against the law. All I did was I went into every conceivable form of music you could think of. Publishing, artist management, labels, record manufacture, distribution, everything. They sent me home saying, you're a bright young man, you have a conflict of interest, make a selection. Do you want to be in the music business, do you want to be in the television business? I said I'd prefer to do television because that was my dream.
During the payola scandal, were you scared?
Yeah. It doesn't sound too bizarre now in the 90s, but they tapped my phone, they broke into my house. It was a very enlightening experience. As an older, mature person now, it was the first time I realized that we didn't live in a pure society, that politicians weren't necessarily nice nor good people, and that the government wasn't necessarily the good guy. Really rough experience.
What happens a lot of times when you're as successful and as exposed as you are exposed to criticism, and some of it has been Dick Clark, rock and schlock.
Oh yeah, yeah. Usually it's that, or there's nothing of any redeeming value, never anything memorable, most of which is true. I don't deny that. But I'm in the fluff business.
About 10 years ago, you told the Los Angeles Times, my temper is notorious. How bad was your temper?
Bad, real bad. Somebody once said, he doesn't have any ulcers because he's a carrier. He gives other people ulcers. And it was, the inability to understand that everybody can't work at the same tempo and they don't want to, drive ahead that hard. I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything I don't do. In some situations, I'm the boss, but I clean up, I turn out the lights, I stay late if I have to. I do strange things that a lot of bosses don't do, only because I think everybody ought to work that way.
You're not only married to a wonderful woman, you're working with her.
Yeah.
A little pressure?
Pressure? No.
How do you work that out?
I don't recommend this for everybody. This is Carrie, who is here at my side 24 hours a day. We lived together 7 years. We've been married 14 years, so that's 21 years at 24 hours a day. So I don't know what that aggregates to in golden anniversaries, but that's a very unusual arrangement, and it works because she is the most singularly, not placid is the wrong word. She has a happy frame of mind all the time. She can deal with the ups and downs that I have. She makes fun of me when I get out of whack, and it's not acceptable. She pulls me right into shape. She arranges my life. She's fantastic.
Did you guys have a good courtship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Now, how does Dick Clark court his woman?
What is this, the Love Connection? What kind of business?
You don't own that show too, do you?
No, no,
okay.
no. Let me see. I had silly little things. I gave her a ring and a Cracker Jack box and a loaf of bread, had a present. I mean, use your imagination, John. There's hope out there for guys in this business.
Right now in your life, what gives you the most pleasure?
There's so many things that make me happy that I'll give you an answer that's not very imaginative. I'm one of those lucky people that finally found a person to share my life with. I've gotten very sloppy with this with my wife on occasion. I said, you know how grateful I am to be able to have my life with you, because everything else is unimportant. There was a moment in time earlier this year when there was a possibility she might be very ill. It turned out to be nothing. And it was very, very enlightening experience and very selfish. And like in all emergencies, you pray a lot. A lot of people do. And I said, God, what will I do if I lose her? And I thought about the very minute. I said, oh, excuse me. I'm thinking of myself. But my first thought was there'll be no life if she goes away, which was a very sad thought for a moment. And I hope I quickly retrieved and transferred my thoughts to her well-being, but it was a selfish first thought. We are very, very close. And that's the best part. That gives me the most happiness.
Coming up, Roy Rogers.